Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. It's always nice to get revenge on a rude person and at the same time take away his job. Well, let's not hide it. Our first story's ready for fans of petty revenge. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Oops, sorry to get you fired. This happened about 12 years ago. I live in an island town, 80,000 people, that, although it was in probably the top foodie area of the country, had few good restaurants. There was one German restaurant within walking distance of my house, so I'd sometimes go with my wife and two little kids and other friends and family members. This restaurant did sausages well and had good draft beer, but all other dishes were inconsistent. It had all the moves of a good restaurant, but just couldn't deliver the food. Someone always came away disappointed with their meal, and the prices were fairly steep. The host or maitre d' of this restaurant was off-putting. He liked joking and flirting with the staff, but seemed to find customers, unless they were his favorites, annoying. Let's just say he was oddly smug and never took effort to make people feel welcome, even though this was his sole job. Anyway, the last time I went there, we had mediocre meals. On the way out, the host just looked at us blankly, so I actually said goodbye first, just to get a response. He said goodbye back as if he were doing me a favor. By the time we got home, I was pissed. I created a fake Yelp account with a fake picture and wrote a hard-hitting review. I called out the host, asking why he was such a snob. Gratifyingly, someone commented on the restaurant the next day and said the preceding review said everything I wanted to say. So I wasn't the only one. Anyway, maybe 6 months later, I happened to be in a local market when a softball team came in, and who should be there but the host? He seemed to be kind of looking at me as if he wanted to say something but didn't. Later, I looked at my fake Yelp account. There was a months-old message from the owner saying, "You should come back in for a free meal. We've changed the menu, and that host guy is gone." So I'm not sure, but I may have accidentally got the host fired. A few months later, I went back, and it seemed to me that the waitress, who'd been there before, was giving me hard looks. Did the host and waitress work out the most likely suspects for the review? Never did find out, but justice was served. And our second story. Need a doctor's note, do you? I hurt my back working in my yard on Saturday, but I made it to work on Monday. I had to lift a few heavy things into a dumpster at work and probably hurt my back more. On Tuesday, I called in sick because I couldn't get out of bed. Excruciating pain when I tried to stand up. Getting to the bathroom was a challenge. Same thing on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. My boss, who everyone hates with a passion, texts me on Thursday and tells me I need a doctor's note if I take 3 or more days off. In 16 years of working there, I've never taken more than 2 sick days off in a row. Some years I didn't have 1 sick day. We get 160 hours of sick time a year. I checked the policy, and I only need a note if I take 4 days off. I managed to talk to my doctor on Friday, which was a miracle because of COVID, and he gave me a prescription for a painkiller and a muscle relaxer. But the best thing he gave me was a note to excuse my absence from work for 2 weeks. The note actually said he'd reassess my acute injury after 2 weeks. Thanks, doctor. Most likely, if my boss didn't ask me for a note, I would have been back to work already, Monday. I'm near retirement, so I'm going to follow my doctor's advice and take the 2 weeks off, and perhaps more, instead of being a tough guy and struggling through the pain at work. Note, the doctor also prescribed physio, and I'm recovering quickly. I'm going to follow my doctor's advice to the letter. Update. I'm now retired. I went back to work for 10 days and decided that was enough. Having nearly 3 weeks off felt amazing, even with a sore back for part of it. In 30 years of work, I never had 3 weeks off in a row. My back's fine, and I'm doing back exercises to keep it that way. Good for you. No sense sacrificing your health for an ungrateful employer. And our last story. I guess it's my business now. What's important to note is that the way my industry runs is essentially via monthly service contracts with clients. There are 3 major players in the story: myself, OP, old owner, let's call him Steve, and new owner, let's call him Kyle. Act 1. Do what you love. As an aimless teenager, I started working for a small business owned by Steve. It turns out I really enjoyed what I did, so slowly over time my life plan shifted to make sure I could continue to work for Steve for the long term. This included transferring to a local college, and because the business was predominantly run on part-time hours, making sure that any other jobs I had never conflicted with the hours I was expected to work for Steve. Steve was flawed, but overall a good boss who mostly looked out for me. I certainly think over the years he'd taken advantage of me in small ways, but looking back, I really have no complaints. The thing is that while I started working for Steve, the business name recognition was always directed towards Steve. Over the years, it became, go to OP, he's the best. This got to the point where I do indeed truly believe that if I did not end up working for Steve, it's very likely his business would have been nowhere near as successful as it eventually became. As years went on, it was heavily implied that when Steve retired, the business would go to me. It was never specifically stated, but Steve did have a way about skirting around those types of issues and giving me hope. Act 2. Enter Kyle. About 3 years before COVID, Steve decided to retire and sell his business. He did indeed fulfill his promise by making a half-buttered attempt to sell it to me at an unreasonable price, but it was very clear he already had another buyer in mind, Kyle. Kyle owned another local business just outside our market area in the same industry. Because of the way the industry worked, there really was much, if any, overlap in potential customers. But Kyle had a very large amount of money and was willing to buy. What's important to note here is that, again, I do truly believe that if I didn't play ball and agree to work for Kyle, my role was so integral to operation at our business, there's no possible way a sale could go through. Over the course of negotiations, Kyle ended up buying the business and putting me in charge of running the day-to-day, something I was mostly already doing, but with a few more administrative tasks tacked onto it. The thing is, my name was still the name in town, and Kyle made zero effort to ever be on location, so nobody that did business with us ever really knew who Kyle was. Act 3. Kyle's kind of a jerk, and how I learned to stand up for myself. All was well for a while. Kyle would openly talk about me being the head honcho at my location and mostly left me alone to deal with my clients and the professional and personable nature that I had learned from Steve. Things first came to a head a year before COVID when Kyle sent me to an industry conference for 4 days. I'd need to take time off from my other job, which I was fine with. At the conclusion of the conference, I put in an hours request for the hours I spent at the conference. I was super nice about it. Actually, I should have clocked all hours at the convention each day, but instead didn't account for hours for seminars that would help my boss, but were ones that I wanted to attend. The request was denied, and I was told industry conferences are enriching activities. We pay for your admission, but they're on your own time. This took 2 weeks to resolve, but ended with me essentially saying, look, I'll still work for you because I love what I do. However, if I don't get paid, I'll never go to another one of these conferences again to get new ideas for you. I was immediately paid. I'll spare similar smaller stories of that nature, but that slowly started to become the relationship between Kyle and I. Act 4. COVID hits. When COVID hit, our locations were shut down, and for 3 weeks we weren't able to do anything. Meanwhile, our clients were still paying for services, and because Kyle had recently moved to a new client payment portal that I hadn't been trained on yet, I wasn't able to help any clients get their money back. At one point, I messaged Kyle about going virtual and being able to still assist clients, and got a very angry text back full of curses that essentially said, look, you're not the boss, go F yourself. You had your chance to be the owner and turned it down. I'm in charge. We did eventually go virtual about a week later. The big problem, of course, being that I would receive daily texts / emails / calls from clients about their membership / bills, and there was nothing I could do to help them. It was at this point that I knew crap was hitting the fan and I needed to start doing something. So over the course of the next 2 months, I did a couple things. Spent an inordinate amount of time studying the best business structures, communicated with all the other staff at my location about my intentions, continued to give 110% to my clients in a virtual capacity, built a website and social media presence from the ground up. I don't think Kyle was expecting any of this, and he probably didn't also realize that because I often had to do back-end stuff from home, I also had what was essentially a little black book of every client, their email addresses, and phone numbers. Act 5. Surgical strikes. When everything was ready, I waited very patiently only the end of a service month. As I mentioned, All of our clients had monthly costs, and I didn't want to put anyone out of any part of their costs. On the last weekday of the month, I instructed the staff who'd be helping clients that day to tell them to check their emails at the end of the day. At the end of the day, I sent out an email to all active and some non-active clients, as well as texting service to text everybody. I launched our social media accounts, our website, and even enlisted a very small amount of trusted clients to spread the word via social media once I gave them the signal. Within 15 minutes of everything, my phone was ringing off the hook. I had 50 plus emails in my inbox from different people, and my Facebook accounts were completely blowing up with local chatter. I also heard from many of the people that they were calling Kyle to cancel their service. We hosted a Zoom meeting for all concerned parties and essentially decided to take the weekend to clear up any confusion with the systems and start fresh and open our doors on Monday. Within an hour of everything, Kyle sent out a text blast to every client that they'd be shutting their doors effective immediately. At the start of COVID, we had roughly 50 active clients at the business. On my first day of business, I had signed up 75 active clients, many inactive ones telling me, "Yeah, we stopped doing business with you guys because Kyle was kind of a jerk." What's really important to keep in mind here is that I never wanted to nor cared to be a business owner. I was very happy working for somebody else as long as I wasn't treated like crap. Had Kyle treated me even remotely better, the location would have continued to thrive and been a staple of our local community. Kyle chose to be a jerk and try to get quick money and cheat people, and Kyle lost out. We've been in business now almost 2 years, have nearly tripled Kyle's active numbers, and continue to be a staple in our community. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.